Thank you for joining this special presentation of the Fox 25 Edmond Mayoral Debate.
Hello and welcome to Fox 25's Edmond Mayoral Debate. Two candidates vying to become the next mayor of Edmond, replacing current Mayor Darrell Davis.
Now, people living in Edmond will make their voice heard in an election on April 1st. Let's introduce you to the candidates right out of the gate here. Tom Robins, elected to the Edmond City Council in 2023. Since becoming a city councilor, he's helped secure paid family leave for first responders and has been a supporter of the Uncommon Ground Sculpture Park project. Tom's a business owner. Previously served as Oklahoma's Deputy Secretary of Energy. He's also previously worked as a staff member on the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee during the confirmation hearings of Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Samuel Alito.
Mark Nash is new to the political scene, but no stranger to community work. He has a 12-year tenure on the Edmond Economic Development Authority Board of Trustees and has also been involved with the Edmond Public Schools Foundation. He's a founding member of the Edmond Neighborhood Alliance. Nash has experience with international process engineering and consulting, and he's also served 10 years with the state of Oklahoma as a management auditor, Senate fiscal analyst, and director of finance for DPS.
Now, both candidates have agreed to the rules of today's debate. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer each question. They'll also have 5 30-second rebuttals, and each candidate will choose when they'd like to use those rebuttals.
There will be no opening statements, but each candidate will have 2 minutes at the end of the debate for closing statements. The questions and subjects have been chosen by Adam and myself, and they've not been shared with the candidates. Now, the first question, as determined by a coin toss, will go to Tom Robins. So, Tom, let's start with you. What do you think is the biggest issue facing the city of Edmond right now?
I've knocked over 5,000 doors as I've went to meet our citizens, and they always tell me that there's kind of two things that are tied. Number one is transportation. People are sick of traffic, and I have a plan on day one to be able to do that. By looking at our reserve funds and savings that we can do across the city of Edmond, I'll move to have a doubling of the amount of money that we spend to be able to fix our streets, get Edmond citizens moving. Look, I'm the minivan mayor. If I'm elected, I have 3 kids. I'm in and out of the minivan. That's why I drove here today as we're picking things up. I know how important it is for transportation to get things moving. And so when we work together to know and understand that before we have development happen, we need to have a dedicated transportation plan and dedicated funding. So when I talk to our citizens and they talk to me on the door, they're very concerned about the congestion and traffic. And on day one, I'll have the ability to do that and address that in the budget. Number two, quickly behind that, is they just want to see budget transparency. I've been a champion of that throughout my professional career. I've done that on city council, and I've pushed to be able to get more transparency in our budget.
All right, Mark, let's turn to you. What is the number one issue you think affecting Edmond?
The number one issue is the budget. It is budget transparency. It is responsible spending. We have a 284-page budget book this year, and having spent time working with budgets at the state level, having to put together budgets for a state agency, I can tell you that when it takes me 2 hours just to understand the basics of the summary page of the city's budget, we have an issue. We have got to clean up our budget process so that we can actually understand what's there, and that we can then give our different departments a budget that they can live with. Today, they spend money, and when they run out, we just do a budget revision. That's not the way it ought to work. We shouldn't have transfers in, transfers out. That just looks like a shell game. We have got to get the spending under control, the budget under control, before we can even say how much money we have to spend on anything else.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, and we want to keep this thing moving. One of the big things we talked about here on Fox 25 was the Edmond GO Bond. And our next question for you guys is, we want to know, did you vote for or against the Edmond GO Bond? And we'd love to also hear why or why not.
So when I ran for city council, I promised all of the residents when I was running that we would have an up or down vote, giving citizens the opportunity to be able to vote up or down on providing dedicated funding, which is bond funding for transportation, public safety, for recreation. Every city above 30,000 in the state of Oklahoma utilizes that tool as something to be able to build those infrastructure projects. So I said that number one, I'd put that on the ballot. Number two, I'd help champion that, which I did. And then number three, I would respect the voters and what they did. And so as that went to the vote, the voters decided that they did not want to be able to do that. And so just true to my word, we'll build a budget as mayor that doesn't have that tool to be able to address those. We'll look at different ways to be able to do it. But I won't be revisiting bond funding when I'm elected mayor. I also won't be revisiting raising the sales tax to be able to fund gaps. I think the citizens have said we need to live within our means, focus on our absolutely critical needs and not our wants. But that was something I campaigned on. That was something I proudly shared with Mark Nash when he endorsed me, that I would put that up for a vote, that I would champion it, and that I would respect it. And so he has good taste. He endorsed me when I was a city councilor, when I ran on that. And I was unique. I was a politician who ran and actually did what I said I was going to do.
All right, Mark.
All right.
Bond.
I was against the Go Bonds. I campaigned against the Go Bonds. I wrote editorials for the Edmond Way newspaper. I spoke at several forums in opposition to them. It was a bad process. It was a bad commitment out of anybody in the city to do it the way they decided to do it. You do not cram that type of an issue through with a 25-person committee in 30 days. And that's what happened. And then we came out with a 14.4% property tax increase, which is what it would have been if it had passed. That is ridiculous when inflation has been what it has been. And to answer Tom's statement about me endorsing him, yes, I did. But guess what? When Tom decided to run for mayor, after he had told my editorial board that he only wanted to serve the voters of Ward 1 for 4 years, he couldn't keep my support anymore. That's what got me into this race, the Go Bonds and what was going on with it.
Feel like a rebuttal?
Yeah, so as Mark Nash admits, I met with him and I said, hey, we're going to put it up and down for a vote. I'm for these Go Bonds, and he fully endorsed me. And so it was an idea that he was for. And so he's the only one in town that's going around telling people that because I want to be able to lead as mayor, which would keep me on the city council, that he feels that people have somewhat of an abandonment issue. I've only heard that from him and a handful of his supporters. The way it works in Edmond when you run for city council and the way my election worked is I was elected by the voters citywide. And I have a record that I'm going to be running on public safety and transportation and other things, but I'm proud for his endorsement when I told him I was going to do the GO bonds.
And Mark, you have a rebuttal here to use
I do.
as well. Sure.
I sat down with Tom and said, I'm going to fight you on this bond issue. I didn't say I was going to endorse it. And to say that I'm the only one going around saying that he abandoned his voters in Ward 1 is ridiculous. He had a vote on the council for 2 more years, and he walked away from it. Guess what he gets with mayor? 1 vote for 2 more years.
So let's stick with you, Mark. We were talking about the budget earlier. You've got a $453.5 million budget, but yet tax collections, we've seen them slip. The Go Bond failed. We've got a capital improvement sales tax that's going to expire in 2027. So what is your plan to increase revenue and get that growth in Edmond?
Well, the very first thing we've got to do is we have to understand what it takes to run city government. And with our budget process today, we can't see that. We have got to go in, we've got to understand how much money we have, figure out where the excess is, take that back so we can see where we sit. Then we've got to focus primarily on getting the sales tax revenue up. We have to be ready to answer the question when the vote comes up in 2027, do we renew these taxes? Do we make them permanent? What do we do? I mean, we may need to increase taxes to get these street projects done, but I don't know the answer to that yet, because until we know how much money we're actually spending and how much is available, and we quit eating into our reserves, that's a tough question to answer.
All right, and Tom, your answer to this question, of course, the Go Bond was to solve a problem. It failed. So how do we increase the revenue into the city?
So it's a multiple-pronged approach. Number one is we need to work with our city businesses that are already investing and entrepreneurs that are working right here in Edmond. I'm really concerned about the Gateway of Edmond Broadway extension. If you've seen it over the last couple of years, it's become blighted. I was with Edmond students, and we were doing a mock city council where they had to be as if they were a city councilor. I love doing that with them every year. And one of the girls, raised her hand when I said, what do you think one of the opportunities or challenges are? She goes, why do we have so many massage parlors and vape shops in Edmond? This is a high school senior that's concerned about this. I think we need a mayor who's going to stand up for citizens, that's going to be tough on zoning. Under my watch, we are going to get rid of all the 24/7 flickering light massage parlors. We're going to get rid of this sort of influx that we've seen of people just setting up vape shop after vape shop. I'm going to be focused on growing the businesses which are making a difference in Edmond, working with our new Edmond Economic Developer Authority Executive Director, working with our Chamber of Commerce. While I was mayor, and this is not a huge novel idea, but I thought, you know, we need to get that dollar circulating in Edmond. So while I was mayor, I had hosted the first ever effort to be able to bring in businesses that were Edmond to start doing business with our city. Because we do spend a couple $100 million, I thought it was important to bring them into the conversation and get them involved. I'm a champion for small business. I'm a small business owner, and we're going to grow our small businesses here in Edmond.
Let's continue on with a point that you kind of brought up there. 3 prostitution-related arrests from August to November 2024 at massage parlors in Edmond. 8 sting operations between 2018 and the end of 2024. So how would you, in some detail here, address the massage parlor prostitution issue? Tom, we'll start with you here.
Well, I'm the first member of City Council or mayor who's acted decisively on this issue. There was one that was brought to my attention. The police think we have over 20 of them, illicit 24/7 massage parlors in our community, some right next door to each other. And these have the flickering lights, they have the backroom parking, they have the obscured front, they have spray painted signs. And so I immediately worked to shut one down in my district, but then I went a step further because this is how I lead, and I figured out the root cause. The root cause was a state law which has given our cosmetology board in the state of Oklahoma primacy so that we can't get a business license up front from those businesses, and we can't set basic zoning standards. So I held a town hall, and by the way, I'm the only member of City Council who held town halls. I'll continue to do that as your mayor quarterly to be able to hold town halls from our citizens. And I brought together Sheriff Tommy Johns, who is supporting my campaign because of my approach to this and other issues. I brought together our police chief. I brought together the head of human trafficking. And what I found was that Oklahoma statewide has a problem. And to fix it, we need to change the law or the statute. And so I have a bill right now. It's just passed out of Senate committee that'll give Edmond the authority back to have business license and to be able to do basic zoning. So I've acted. When I'm mayor, these go away.
Mark?
All right, well, let's unpack that. First of all, Tom doesn't have a bill. The legislature has a bill. Our police department, our city attorneys, several of them, our city council has been working as a team for at least 4 years on this very issue because we can't regulate where massage parlors go. We can't regulate where dispensaries go. It is not a new problem. We're finally seeing some legs on it. Our legislative representatives have been working in the legislature this session. For the first time, we're finally getting some traction. So let's support what's going on down at the Capitol and let's get this thing passed.
Tom, your rebuttal here.
Yeah, I would just like to say, Mark, it's okay if you want to be mayor and be positive. So I've worked really hard on this issue, and I actually brought together the stakeholders, and I actually sat down with the state senator and the authors. So we live in what's called a citizen legislature. And when you're mayor, if you get to do that, citizens will come to you with ideas. So I came to them with this idea, this problem that had been neglected, this crime that had gone on, these news reports, this over and over cycle. And I actually made a public plea and asked citizens to join me at the Capitol. I didn't see you there. So what I would say is, if you want to be negative for the sake of being negative or nasty for being nasty, that's not how you're going to win the hearts and minds of these voters. I've taken on this issue of massage parlors, and I've done it. And yes, I've worked with the legislature, just like people would want to work with you as mayor to get things done.
And Mark, you also wanted a rebuttal to this?
I do. Look, the bottom line is I've been talking to police officers here in Edmond. I listen to what they're saying, and they tell me they've been working on this problem. It's not a one-year problem. I've talked to my legislators, and they have been working on this for several years trying to get that back. Magically, it's happening now. I don't know if it's Tom. I don't know if it's you. I don't know if it's the bill.
I asked for the legislation.
We want to allot him his time. He uses a rebuttal here. We want to allot him his time.
I don't know if it's, if it's the right time. I don't know if it's the 4+ years of effort that our police department, that our city attorney has been putting into this, but we're finally seeing success on it, and I'm thrilled.
All right, let's stick with you, Mark, on this next question, staying on the topic of crime, because I know there are several areas in the city that have been deemed high crime areas. You've got Rolling Green Apartments that the Fraternal Order of Police said there were more than 250 emergency calls in the last 6 months. New Light Village been declared a public nuisance. How do you target these areas that just keep having problems?
So first of all, let's differentiate between high crime and high call volume, because Rolling Green's just like Spring Creek at Edmond, which is on 15th Street, and several other apartment complexes are what are considered high volume call areas. And that's that's what happens when you have apartments. Is there a lot of crime there? Yes. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you know what we did? We would do warrant sweeps at those apartments, Rolling Greens in particular, to clean things up. We don't do that now. We need to get back to it. We need to do community policing so that the people who live in these apartments have the opportunity to get to know the police and aren't afraid to call and ask for help. That's what's going to get us there. We can't strong arm property owners. When you talk about the Oyo Hotel or whatever it's called today, they had property rights. It took the city almost 10 years to finally get that place shut down.
All right, Tom, what is your plan for these areas that tend to have a lot of call volume or crime?
This is one of the biggest contrasts and differences between myself and my opponent. I'm a leader of action. It might have taken previous folks 10 years. It took me 6 months on city council with the property that used to be the OYO property. As soon as I found out that they were stacking and packing veterans and taking advantage of homeless veterans and putting them in disgusting, deplorable, and despicable places that you wouldn't want anybody that you loved or cared about to live. I, on my own dime, went to Washington, D.C., met with Senator Langford, met with Congresswoman Bice. I said, I want to meet with the HUD person in charge of this. They set me up with the Undersecretary of HUD. He says, what do you want to do? I said, is there a naughty list? This guy needs to be on it. And when I met with our city attorney, she handed me a box and said, this is the entire file that we have on these guys. What do you want to do? I said, I want to choke them out, and I want to do it now. And I brought them in front of city council. I moved to put that on the agenda. They tried to intimidate me by getting me kicked off and not being able to vote on it. I stood up with our VFW and our American Legion, and we did it there. When it comes to Rolling Green Apartments, there's been 260 police and fire calls there. Mark calls that high crime volume. My gosh, there was somebody murdered there 3 weeks ago. That's not high call volume. It's called violent assault. We need it to stop.
Mark, you had a comment here?
Sure. As I said, just the number of calls doesn't make it a high crime area. It's a high call volume. Yes, there are felonies being committed. Yes, people are in danger. But there are a lot of calls for emergency services as well. And to label it high crime is not doing the people who want to live there because they want their kids in our schools genuine. I mean, let's have a little bit of compassion here and understand that people want to live in Edmond, and sometimes this is all they can afford. Let's help them.
All right, Tom, you also wanted to have a rebuttal on this.
And that's a huge contrast. You help people that live there, like friends of my kids who live there because we go to the school down the street, who said that they know people that have had to call 3 or 4 times for assistance by finally putting your foot down and getting the criminals out. And Mark says we need to walk around and do community policing. That's insulting to the Edmond FOP, our police association. That's why they put out a joint statement with the Edmond Fire Association telling everybody to watch the news report of us talking about what was happening at Rolling Greens. For him, it's just high crime call volume. For me, it's murder, it's rape, it's assault, it's drug dealing, it's kidnapping that has happened. I will pull those out of state, unaccountable landlords that are out of a family trust in Maryland in front of my city council, and we will deal with it and hold them accountable.
All right, gentlemen, as we move to the next question here, we talk about a proposed sales tax for a commuter rail connecting Oklahoma City, Edmond, also Norman as well, pushed back to 2026. I would love to know for you guys is, do you believe the commuter rail should be a priority here? We're starting with Tom on this question. Should this be a priority for Edmond, and why or why not?
My priority is fixing the streets in Edmond and filling the potholes. And we have a significant backlog that's been neglected by previous city managers and government, and we needed to attack that first. The number one issue when I knock on a door is fix our potholes, fix our streets, and get us moving. I have met with the Regional Transit Authority. There'll be a vote in the future. What I'm told right now, at a minimum, it'll cost 0.375% sales tax. I mean, it would bring our sales tax from 8.25 to 9%. We also know that the county's going to be looking for help on the jail and for public safety. We also know that there's going to be other votes that happened in the past, like Edmond residents who want to preserve acreage or do different things. So no, I am not going to defer maintenance on our streets, on our potholes, so that we can sink millions and millions and millions of dollars into having train service between Norman and Edmond. This is another clear contrast. I've said this from the beginning as a brand new Edmond City Councilor. I said it's a great idea, but can we afford it? Right now, the numbers don't add up. We do not have the dollars. We do not have the available funding, and we cannot spend tens of millions of dollars when we're not taking care of our streets and our potholes, which will be my priority as your mayor.
Right, Mark?
All right. Well, Tom said a lot that I agree with on this because we are facing a lot. We're facing the county jail issue. We're facing our taxes coming up for a vote in 2027. We're facing a shortfall in the money to get street overlays done. But unlike Tom, I have not had the opportunity to sit down and have a formal presentation on the RTA piece. Could we save money on the bus line piece if we consolidate with Embark in Oklahoma City? Sure, we probably can. That might help a little bit, but ultimately, until I know what's really included in this package, I'm not going to pass judgment on it. Why? Because we are part of a bigger area. We're part of a metropolitan area, and we at least need to listen to what's going on and have an open and honest dialogue about it.
All right, I know, Tom, you wanted to use your fourth rebuttal.
So I think that's another contrast between me and my opponent. He says he hasn't had time to get a presentation or hasn't had a formal presentation. This has been in front of the city council for years. All the RTA meetings are open to the public. I have gone through all the documents that are available. I've asked all the questions. I've asked for personal meetings, which the RTA representatives would be more than happy to. This has been asked at every town hall, every meeting, every debate, every newspaper that reaches out to us and wants a comment. The fact that Mark doesn't know where he's at on this important issue and that he's willing to significantly raise our taxes when we can't pay for our potholes and our street repairs today just shows that he hasn't done the work to be able to study the issue, which is right in front of him.
Mark?
Tom, would you quit saying I want to raise taxes? I have never said that.
Yeah, you absolutely did.
No.
You told the Edmond Chamber that we had the lowest taxes for sales tax, and it wasn't a matter of raising them, it was how high you could raise them.
That is incorrect, and you know it.
I will text it
what
to you.
I said was
read it to you.
having the lowest sales tax rate in the metro area is not necessarily a bad thing. And if that's what we have to do, that's a possibility.
Let me finish
it was a two-paragraph answer.
Let me finish your quote.
We want to
You
remind
said-
the candidates here, let's stick to these
Oh,
topics
well,
on
let
the
me finish your
questions here
quote.
as well.
Let me finish your quote, since you decided not to full your quote.
Do you have that in front of you?
I have
Don't
it on,
finish
I have
it.
it on my phone. I'll do it right now.
Don't finish
You
it.
You said we have the lowest taxes as far as sales tax, and it's not a matter of raising, it's how high.
That is incorrect. Go ahead.
I'll be happy to share.
Okay, yeah, each of you gentlemen have one more rebuttal. Just wanted to make sure you guys know that. I want to get back to the topic of housing because it seems like anytime there is a new apartment complex proposed in Edmond, there's a lot of criticism. We've seen a lot of pushback from residents anytime they want to do one along I-35 and Memorial, especially in East Edmond. This seems to get a lot of pushback, but yet you say you want people to be able to afford to live there. So how would you deal with new apartment complex developments? Mark, let's start with you.
All right. We have a lot of dissension when it comes to apartments. We've got to accept that fact. Part of the dilemma that we have is you have people who want to talk about affordable housing, and yet every single apartment complex that opens in Edmond seems to be competing not on lowering rates, but on how high they can get the rates to maximize their profit. There are places where Edmond could have apartments that would work. No matter what, we're still going to have part of the population that's going to be against them. What we've got to do is we've got to figure out how we get everybody to the table to figure out where that answer is, because the way we're doing it today is not creating affordable housing. Wendy, when you talked about the apartments at I-35 and Memorial, there was a real challenge there because the first time that came up, they literally were putting a 300-unit apartment complex right up against the property lines of some 2.5 to 5 acre lots where people had been living for years, decades even. And then the second one that came up was this ridiculous 10-story tower on 1.4 acres that was never going to go anywhere. So we've got to figure out the solution, and that means we've got to get everybody together. It's going to take a true group effort with everybody involved, the Neighborhood Alliance, the developers, everybody.
All right, Tom, you've seen the pushback on some of these apartment complexes. What is your plan?
Well, at first, as mayor, number one, what we need to identify is there a transportation plan for any type of housing project? If the answer is no, we can't build it because you can't build roads with no dedicated funding, rainbows, and unicorns. It's not a plan. It's just a hope, it's a wish, or it's desire. What I hear directly on 5,000 plus doors of talking to Edmond citizens is they're sick and tired of these roads being built like this. I call them the accordion roads. And that's where you go from a 1 lane to a 2 lane, back to a turn to a 2 lane. We need to focus on doing development that works for our transportation, that works for our infrastructure. I've been a proud supporter of helping out the housing that supports some of our first responders. Specifically, we have Turning Point Ministries. They and Edmond have a wonderful, ideal community that they have built that allows people that haven't been able to obtain housing to be able to go through a process to learn about financial literacy and put in time and effort in building their home and bring the community along with them. And it's a fantastic example. Everyone should check that out. When they got their funding stripped, it was literally the only thing that we were doing for this type of thing and model that was working. I helped put that back into the budget because it was critical. So when it makes sense, I fight for it. But if it doesn't have a transportation plan, I'm not going to do it as mayor.
We talk about transportation and getting people to the table, and that's all well and good. But if we push a little deeper here, even the city of Edmond released a housing assessment that showed 75% of the people who live in Edmond, or who work in Edmond, can't afford to live in Edmond. And over the next 5 years, anyone 18 to 34, that population is going to decrease because of the cost of living. So we can talk about getting people to the table and building roads and transportation, but let's get down to business here, guys. What is the solution to affordable housing and the potential crisis going on in Edmond right now? And Tom, we'll start with you.
The number one thing that we need to do is that we need to bring projects that are serious, that have the support of the local community. I'm sick and tired of when I get on city council, there's a proposal that's been made, and I ask a very simple question. Have you talked to the neighbors? And it hasn't been done. That's the very first conversation that needs to happen. And when I am the mayor of Edmond, you're not going to be able to come before city council and propose something and have not talked to your neighbors. Second, what I want to go on, and this is so bizarre to me, is that for whatever reason, before being on council, is that when Edmond decides to build something, there's no check-in, check the box, make sure that we've worked with Edmond Public Schools to ask a very basic question of, can you staff this? Can you put teachers here? Are you going to have the facility to be able to support this? Now, on the flip side, we also have struggled, I've heard, with the Edmond schools saying, hey, we're going to build this middle school and elementary school together. Oh, by the way, it's on a 2-lane highway with no shoulder, and it's on a 4-way stop. And then you have frustrated parents, guardians, and all that. And so as mayor, one of the things I'm going to do is people's top concerns are transportation and education. If you don't have the answers on that, it doesn't go anywhere. So we need to get that done first.
Great, Mark.
So let's get back to the question. It was
Housing.
Housing. How are we going to get there? Well, we have really a basic problem in Edmond, and the first piece of it is the cost of land. How are we going to, quote, create affordable housing with the land costs as high as they are? And the truth of the matter is, what does affordable housing really mean? Because affordable housing to someone making $60,000 or less is a whole lot different than for someone making $120,000, $150,000. And it just goes up from there. And as long as you have that diversity, guess what? Prices are going to keep going up. It costs too much to get development projects through our planning department, through our planning process. I heard the other day, talking to a voter, that he had a plan for a project that he was working on, stuck in plan review for 13 months. That's inexcusable. We've got to speed the process up. We've got to become more efficient so that we can actually hold the cost down when we do develop things. It's going to take a lot of process improvement. It's going to take a lot of changes for us to get there, but it's tough because we're starting out behind the 8 ball, literally, because of the cost of land, cost of construction right now, and the cost of doing business to get it through City Hall.
All right, Mark, let's stick with you. Talking about road repairs. We've got 531 miles of streets and roads in Edmond. We know you were against the GO Bond, but that would have set aside $35 million to repave streets, $116 million to widen streets, create pedestrian infrastructure. So how do we get those things done, or how would you?
Well, once again, it goes back and it starts with the budget. We've got to understand where we're spending our money. When we have a $539 million budget, $439 million in revenue, we're searching for where the money is to literally take care of our streets and our other pieces of property, equipment, buildings that the city owns. If we don't figure out where we're spending the money and get that under control first so that we can have responsible spending, we're never going to be able to say, here's what we can put into the road problem. Today, all we know is that every year our street department has less money to go out there and do overlays. Well, if that's happening, at what point do we run out of reserves to do intersection improvements, to do street widening?
All right, Tom, what is your take on fixing the road issues in Edmond?
So great question. I'm ready to lead on this in day one. When you're sworn in, you have 2 meetings, and then you got to be able to pass the budget. So I've already done a deep dive into our budget, already figured out where some of the savings is. And as a mayor and city council, part of it, well, really the crux of it is you need to be able to prioritize. Departments are always going on to build and grow because that's what those departments do, and they want to build on those things. And so, for an example, I know right now a department that has over about $8 to $9 million in their fund, they want to dedicate towards enhancing the fleet services of Edmond. That includes a car wash or upgraded services and mechanic. That's a good idea. There's some merit to that. But you know what a great idea is? Fixing our potholes, fixing our streets. Over the last 8 to 10 years, Edmond's been only spending $4.2 million on fixing our streets. That's like trying to spit in a bucket, water your crops, and feed your family. You just can't get there. It doesn't work. And so on day one in that budget, what I'll move to is sweep that money into and be able to provide day one a more than doubling of fixing our roads, figuring out our maintenance, and addressing these potholes. I've already gone and worked with our local Edmond transportation leaders to put together an Edmond area transportation plan. We'll be implementing that with federal, county, state, and local dollars, and I'm ready day one to go tackle traffic.
Well, bad pun here, but we're going to stay in the same lane. We talk
Ooh.
about
Bad joke.
I-35, right? We've got the construction project going on there, helping out in gridlock, but you can already hear people as we bring this up when we talk about some of the traffic concerns. And you know the spots, right? Broadway, Kelly, 2nd and Bryant. There's a lot of places with issues out there. So a big question for you guys would be, what is the plan here to get rid of some of this congestion on those major roadways and through into Edmond?
We'll start with you, Tom.
Well, first of all, what you got to understand is we're going to invest in Edmond's infrastructure. We're not going to approve projects that don't have a dedicated transportation plan, so we can take some of the pressure off of the system. I went to Washington, D.C., and I helped and was there when they passed and allowed for funding. I fought for Edmond to be bumped up in the Oklahoma Department of Transportation's 8-year road plan and working with our delegation. So help is on the way, but we need to be very mindful how it impacts. Our city can do a dramatically better job in communicating with our residents. I'm very, very active in social media and engaging and responding. And we can do a much better modernized effort to be able to engage citizens about what's happening on their commute. And they also can turn into Fox 25, of course, to get their traffic update. I'll also let you know it also matters what we do with that economic investment after. 2nd and Bryant was multi-million-dollar infrastructure upgrade to that corner. That's where our OU hospital is. People ask me, what's going to go on that corner? What's going to go at that corner? I was horrified as I passed the other day, and the current mayor has allowed for another vape shop to go up. So thank you, Edmond. That's what we get. In fact, it's a vape shop next to a vape shop. When I'm mayor, this stops. We don't put in 20 million plus of economic development and street improvements and traffic improvements and get the result of a vape shop. We need a mayor that has leadership, that understands these issues. And going back to that Edmond senior in high school said, Mr. Robbins, why do we have so many vape shops and massage parlors? That's exactly right. When the city spends the millions of dollars to be able to do that and then turns around without even thinking about it, without even stopping it, just puts a vape shop right there on the main Broadway corner or the main corner, we're doing something wrong. When I'm elected mayor, that stops. We're going to have a new focus when it comes to traffic and our economic development.
Mark?
Well, I can tell you one thing. We've got to slow down this concept of the intelligent traffic system. We have brought that system along over the last 10 plus years. I don't see any improvement in it. I live out east of the interstate, and to be quite honest, it takes me longer during the noon hour to get from my house to Broadway on 2nd Street than it did before the system went in. Why? Because we have more traffic coming to Edmond. We have more people in Edmond. That means we're putting more cars on 4 streets, 2nd Street, 15th Street, Santa Fe, and Kelly. We've been talking about 4-laning our mile roads in Edmond since I got to town in 1989. We still haven't completed that project. The best way to get some of the traffic off of those heavily traveled roads is to give them alternative paths. Let's finish Coltrane, let's finish Covell, let's finish 33rd. If we would at least create other 4-lane corridors, we'd be in much better shape. Then we can start talking about what's next.
All right, gentlemen, now you will each have 2 minutes for closing statements.
Tom Robbins will go first with your closing statement to voters.
It's been my last honor for the last 18 months to be able to serve on Edmond City Council, and being able to be part of this conversation has been great, to knock on so many different doors and have these conversations. I'm running for mayor of Edmond, Oklahoma, because my 3 boys, my wife, we've chosen to live here. We're a community of choice. I've focused on what matters. When I'm mayor, we have it in place now that we will shut down all the illicit massage parlors. When I'm mayor, we'll no longer put up with having every one of our corners double up with vape shops, marijuana shops. When I'm mayor, we will actually call violent crime what it is. When somebody's murdered, or where somebody is raped, or there's drug deals or armed robbery, which is at Rolling Greens, we won't call that high crime calling, we'll call that crime. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Edmond Fraternal Order of Police. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Edmond firefighters, who have been doing a great job this last week protecting and serving. Cutting their budget is off the table. We will continue to make sure that they are trained. I'm glad to have the support of Tommy Johnson, who is our great Oklahoma County Sheriff, because they understand that I'll take action. I did it before, helping our veterans. I'll do it again at Rolling Greens. As I look at one of the most important issues that people talk to me about in addition to transportation, it's water rates. When I knocked on doors in City Council, they said our water rates are too high. And when I got into it, I found out that the project was approved for $309 million by the previous City Council. They had good intent, but the costs are way out of control. And so as I looked at that, and as I sit here today, it's $509 million, almost $500 million for the water infrastructure projects. And so I met with our city manager and I met with our mayor, and I said, we need to audit this, we need to look at it, we need to be able to figure out what our options are, because these costs are way out of control and we're just putting it on our citizens to be able to pay for all of it. And they said, well, Tom, on the next agenda, we're going to put a 5-year rate increase in front of you. What can we do to earn your vote? And that's where the rubber hits the road, folks. That's the real test of courage of what you do when you're in a conversation when the mayor and the city manager look at you and say, what can we do to earn your vote? I said, you can't. It's not for sale. I'm going to represent the people, and I was the only one on Edmond City Council to vote against raising your water rates. My name's Tom Robbins. I'd be honored to have your vote on Tuesday, April 1st, and serve as your next mayor.
Mark, final words for the voters.
All right, thank you. I got into this race because I saw what was happening in Edmond. It reminded me of the state after the oil bust of the 80s, where we were using up all of the rainy day fund just to make ends meet. I don't want that to happen in Edmond. We have a $543 million budget this year. We have $439 million in revenue this year. We're spending $42 million in reserves on bond debt service. That means we're using $62 million of reserves to make the budget work. That's not something that we can keep doing. We have eaten away at our reserves over the past decade. We're not there yet, but we're going to be there. I got into it because I'm looking at the numbers and I'm going, what's the future going to look like? I was against the bond issue. Absolutely, I was against it. Now here I am. I've got to put my money where my mouth is. I've got to get out there and I've got to serve the people of Edmond to help us fix it. Why? Because I've been through this before. I understand government finance. We have a really unique opportunity with our city council starting in May. We have 2 new council members with finance backgrounds. We have another city council member who has been a lobbyist at the Capitol for decades and understands the concepts we're talking about. If I'm elected, when I'm elected, we're going to have the opportunity to truly create a budget process so that we have budgets and reports that people can understand, that the department heads can understand, that the council can understand, and more importantly, that the citizens can understand. I think we have a huge opportunity here to turn things around and set the stage to create a plan for the future. My name is Mark Nash, and I ask for your vote on April 1st.
And with that, we come to the end of the Fox 25 Edmond mayoral debate. We want to thank both Mark Nash and Tom Robbins for joining us, and for you folks watching the program.
Yes, Edmond citizens, the decision is now up to you. You will cast your ballot for the next mayor in just under 2 weeks on April 1st. Be sure to remember to vote, and thank you for joining us.